We're learning today the first Sikha in Parshas Mikeitz in Chelek on page 192. The shir today is being learned L'Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. From Pasuk, in the Pasuk in this week's Parsha where it says Uli Yosef Yulad Shnei Banim, Yosef gave birth to two children when he was in Mitzrayim, B'terem Tovish Nasarov, before the years of hunger arrived. Sagt Rashi, Bepirusha from Gemara, so Rashi says, and he brings this from the Gemara, Mikan she'asa la'adam l'shamish mitasai b'shnei roven. From here, the fact that the Pasuk emphasizes that they were born before the years of the hunger, we learn out that a person may not have marital relations in the times of the years of hunger. Frag Taisvis. So on this Gemara, Taisvis asks the following question. Yecheved is doch geboren geworden ben Achaimis. Yecheved was born as they arrived, as Yaakov and his children all arrived to Mitzrayim, between the walls. In other words, as they were entering to Mitzrayim, and Yaakov and Banim angekommen ke Mitzrayim. That was during the time of the hunger years. It was already within the second year, actually, into the hunger. How can we say, as Levi, Avi Yecheved, Levi, the father of Yecheved, hat overgiven Nefanissa Chas v'Shalom. So he was over here on this Isser of Tashmish Hamita in the years of hunger, and he has a daughter, and at the time when they're entering to Mitzrayim. Al derech zeh fragt men, there's a similar question that the Mefarshim ask. From them was the state, it says by Yitzchak, Vayagim Yitzchak Mitzachik. This is in the time when Parshas tell this, when there was also a hunger, and Yitzchak went to the city of Gerar. And there it says that Avimelech saw that Yitzchak was Mitzachik, and Rashi says, Shara'o Mishamish Mitasei, that he saw Yitzchak with marital relations, es doch gewen arav baretz. So the question is, it's a time of hunger. How was Yitzchak allowed to have Tashmish Hamita on the time of hunger? Mefarshim zenen meidichem them. The Mefarshim speak about this at length, offering all kinds of explanations why Levi and Yitzchak were allowed to do what they did. And for them, the Shailas Hanal become Ifanim and answer these questions in different ways, umehem, and some of the answers are as follows. And the Rabbi here will bring three of the answers. Aleph, number one, this is Nitkin Isser Mamish. It's not a real full Isser that it's totally forbidden. Now, Blois Amidus Chassidus, it's something which is Midus Chassidus, it's beyond the letter of the law, something that you should be careful with. And Yitzchak v'Levi zera nit given Nizer Amidus Chassidus. And Yitzchak and Levi, since it wasn't an Isser, so therefore they were not careful with this because it's only Amidus Chassidus. Other or similar, as far Matan Torah is das not given a Oster. Before Matan Torah, this Issa did not apply. And the Raya from Yosef is blois an asmachte. The Raya brought here from the Pasuk where it says the term beterem, that the children were born before the time of hunger. It's an asmachte. Chazal are bringing a source for this Issa from here, but this is not really the source of the Issa before Matan Torah. That's one answer. Bey is another answer. Divas dena chasuche banim. Someone that doesn't have any children. What that means is, even if you have a child, but you still didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Piri Viribya, which according to the halacha means a zachar and a nekeva, son and a daughter. Yitzchak v'Levi and Yenim Zman, like Yitzchak and Levi at that time, they didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Piri Viribya yet. Other, Belel Tefillah, or a night of Tefillah when there's a mitzvah, is by Zenit Dada Isser. So then this Isser of Tashmish Hamita in the time and years of a hunger does not apply. So that's why for Yitzchak and Levi it was mutter. Gimel, a third answer that the Mefarshim say, the Isser is nar when Yisrael shroim b'tzar. The Isser is only applicable in a time when the Yidden are in a time of difficulty and pain, so then it's not appropriate to have Tashmish Hamita in this time. Und the far is es nicht gewesen kein Isser by Yitzchak and Levi, so for Yitzchak and Levi this wasn't the Isser, Hayes, as Yaakov and Bonov, sind nicht gewesen shroim b'tzar, aber sie haben dann gat vor. Because for Levi, the main thing that the Rebbe is focusing on here, so Levi, Yaakov, and all his children, they weren't in a situation of tsar at all. They had enough grain, enough food, so therefore Tashmish Hamita was allowed. Das was Yosef hat sich abgehalten, the fact that Yosef did refrain, is weil hat nicht gewusst, als tvua, because Yosef didn't know exactly what's the condition with his family in Eretz Yisrael, if they have enough or they don't. Und hat gemeint, es ist eine Shroim b'tzar. And therefore he thought that they were in a time of pain, difficulty, years of hunger. So therefore for him, the Pasuk is saying that the child was born, or the children were born, B'terem Tavish Nasarov. These are the answers that the Mefarshim give for this question. So based on all of this, there's a big wonder here as far as Rashi is concerned. Why doesn't Rashi answer these questions regarding Yitzchak and Levi, which are obvious questions? These are questions that come up even just simply learning the understanding of the pasuk in Pshat. In the pasuk in Parshas Teilis, where it says Avimelech who saw is Rashi mefarish hara mishamish mitase. So Rashi brings this Pshat that he saw Yitzchak in Tashmish Hamita. Und Rashi sagt beferish as damals is given mitnor arav ba'aretz. It's not only that there was a time of a hunger in Eretz Yisrael, nor ashnas ravim. There was a year of a hunger. Al derech zeh bringt Rashi herab bepirusha ala Torah. Rashi also quotes that as Yocheved neilde ben Achaimis, Yocheved was born as they were entering into Mitzrayim. But this is given in the Shnei Sarav, Kim Befurish B'Torah, meaning she was born in the years of the hunger, as it's clear in the Torah. So why, if Rashi brings this Isser of Tashmish Hamita in the years of hunger, does he not in any way answer how Levi and Yitzchak were able to have Tashmish Hamita in this time? Now you can't answer as Rashi verlässt auf eine von den Tirutzim anal that we have many answers. So Rashi relies on one of these answers. Warum neusuf auf die verschiedenen Schwierigkeiten, wir sind da in jeder von den Tirutzim, in addition to the fact that each one of these answers have difficulties with them. Some of them are pointed out earlier here in the footnotes. The Rebbe is not going to go through all of them. It's dieselbe Shaila in Zeyala. But there's one question that you could ask on all of them. There's an klal afilinit nirmaz in Pirish Rashi. None of these answers does Rashi hint to them to explain to answer this question. So if Rashi would hold up any of these questions and there was a need for an answer and this was the answer, one of these answers, Rashi would hint to this. The Gerät kam upon him, as I already said many times. Hat Rashi geschrieben sein Pirish ala Torah in Asignen, als Eicha ben Chomish l'Mikra, so kann verstehen, kavon es Rashi für seine gezählte Wörter. Rashi wrote his Pirish ala Torah that with the few words that he says, even a child reading it and translating it and understanding properly can come and see the full pshat that he has to know. He doesn't need any additional mafarshim to come and explain things for him. He doesn't have to look for any additional explanation. So from them, was Rashi sagt das dann. From the fact that Rashi just says very simple and plain. And Rashi doesn't make any differences or any conditions to this. Oster la'adam l'shamish mitase b'shnei ravin. That there's the Isser of Tashmish Hamita in the years of hunger. Is muchach. So from this is clear, and here the Rebbe goes through that none of the limitations and any of the answers mentioned before would apply. As Aleph number 1, this is an Isser, kipshute, that it's actually forbidden and it's not just something which is lefnim mishur satin. Beis der Isser is far alamen, ununtershed. This Isser applies to everyone without any exception. Euch far Yosefin, far Matan Torah, und far Chasuche Bonim, und Beleel Tefillah, including for Yosef even before Matan Torah, and someone that doesn't have children, and Beleel Tefillah when it's a mitzvah. And Gimel says dit verbunden dafke mit dem Tsar von Yidden. The basis of this Isser is not only, and it's not connected to the fact that there are Yidden that are suffering. Not if it's not a matzah von Shnei Ravim ba'olam, as long as it's a time of hunger in the world, is this Oster. The Isser applies. So the question still remains, why does Rashi not answer this question, and none of these answers, apparently Rashi doesn't tell of them? Noch hat mir in Pirish Rashi, another big question here on what this Rashi is as follows. Rashi sagt, mikan she'asa l'adam chola. That we learn from here, specifically what it says here by Yosef, beterem, that you're not allowed to have Tashem Shemitah in the time of hunger. As the Isser went up from dem Pasuk, it's learned from here. Von Adgoshas Rashi, mikan, the fact that Rashi emphasizes from here is moving, it's understood. As Rashi will show sein, a zweite Ort, und warum wir wird lechore gekent, oplennen dem Isser. Rashi is negating, don't think there's another source for this Isser. No, the source is here. But von Rashi is the limit is mikan daf gets only from here. So what is Rashi exactly negating? Gefit mit Takke in Yerushalmi und Medrash. So we find in Yerushalmi and in the Medrash, as zusammen mit dem Limud anal von Yosef, together with this that we learn here from Yosef, wird abgebracht der Pasuk was steht bei Noachen. They bring also what it says regarding Noach when he was in the Teva, uvasa ela Teva, ata uvanecha ve'ishtecha u'neshebanecha yitach. So it separates Noach and his children and his wife and the wives of the children. From Velachem it up, and from this you learn out as biknisasi leteva nesroloi tashmish hamita. And while they were in the Teva, the same Isser of tashmish hamita applied. But das is l'chayre dezelbe Isser wie b'shnei Rabin. Seemingly, it's the same kind of Isser that there is in years of hunger. As the Nazman, when the Welt is shari b'tzar, when the world is in a time of suffering, is menasa b'tashim shamita, this Isser applies. Is tamua b'yaiser, so if so, this is very difficult here with Rashi. Rashi atzma in sein Pirush al Teire. So Rashi earlier in Parshas Noach sagt, as Noach is given Oster l'shamish b'tasei b'knisasei l'teva, that Noach, the Isser of Tashmish Hamita applied when he was in the Teva. And Rashi brings the reason, Mipnei sha'olam shari b'tzar, because the world is in a time of suffering. So if so, vi sagt Rashi mikan sha'asachula. How could Rashi come and say now that we learn this Isser here, only from this pasuk that it says by Yosef, as das Latin areis dafke mikan, b'shas, as meken das upline von dem pasuk frie by Noach. If it could be learned that already from earlier, and Rashi quotes it there regarding Noach, why does he say that we learn it not only here from Yosef? So we have the questions here on Rashi, both the questions that Tosfos and Mefarshim ask, why does Rashi not bavarin, why this Isser did not apply by Levi or Yitzchak, and why does Rashi say that this is learned dafke from Yosef and not from when Noach entered into the Teva, which Rashi himself quotes. So the answer here is Vihi Anisenes. This itself is the point that when Rashi says that we learn it dafka from Yosef and not from Noach, that will give us the understanding of what the Isser over here by Yosef is based on and how it's different from the Isser that Rashi mentions already when Noach was in the Teva, and this will answer everything. The fact that Rashi adds, and the Gemara does not say this, then vart mikan, that we learn it from here. Macht Rashi klar, Rashi is making it clear, as da is al derech hapshat, nit dezelbe Isser wie bei Noachim. That over here, the Isser that we learn over here in the years of hunger is not the same as that is by Noach. Val da is klal nida yenem tam ha'olam shori b'tzar. Over here, this reason of ha'olam shori b'tzar, that the world is in a time of pain and suffering, does not apply over here to the Isser the way it is by the time of the hunger by Yosef. Why is that? Ha'olam shori b'tzar. This expression, that the world is in a time of suffering by Mabel, as it was at the time of the Mabel, meint the Welt Bechlal. It's referring to the world in the very general sense, that the world in general is in a time of suffering. But it doesn't refer to anybody specifically that was actually suffering. V'adarav, on the contrary, nit mentioned. It doesn't refer to people or any individual person that was suffering, because at that time, the people that were all killed. Chayis v'chulu, any of the animals and so on, or anything else that existed on the world. You can't say regarding any animals or anything specific in the world that was in a time of suffering. They all don't exist. That the entire existence of the world from the Mabel was all wiped out. So therefore, Olam Shari B'tzar must mean that, nevertheless, generally speaking, the entire world is in a condition and time of suffering. Now, that's the simple meaning of Olam Shari B'tzar, that it refers to the world B'chlal. Now, if we're going to say that Olam Shari B'tzar, which means B'chlal, but what it refers to is, as das meint man, die Olam von welche, or again, die von Olam, welche seine Nitzel geworden b'Teva. It's referring to the world inside the Teva. That in general, everyone that was inside the Teva was in a situation of Tsar, suffering. Was der Sein dorten is in a Neifung von Shari B'tzar. Just being inside the Teva for all this time is a situation of Tsar. So if that's the Piddush, so that includes everybody in the Teva. Noach, his children, and their wives are also included in this Shah. They're also in this Tsar. So the meaning of Olam Shari B'tzar means that the Olam of the Teva, everybody inside there is actually in this condition, locked inside the Teva, suffering. So if you want to learn from here, this halacha brought in the beginning that we learn from Yosef, that when there's a hunger in the world and there are people that are suffering, so then there's an Isser of Tashmish Mitter for anybody. What's the Chiddush over there of that Isser? The Chiddush of that Isser is, as the Rabbi here explains, that even others that are not necessarily suffering in this hunger, but nevertheless, if it's a year of hunger and there are those that are suffering, the Isser of Tashmish Mitter applies. If so, you can't learn this out from the time in the Teva when it says Ha'olam Shari B'tzar, that the world B'chlal is Shari B'tzar. And that could mean everybody. And if it refers to the ones in the Teva, that means that Noach and everybody in the Teva was included in that Tsar. So if so, onid vider issa nilmat. So this is unlike the issa that we would learn out from here, as Atzaludov mentions and in Bitzar, that there are a number or even majority of people that are suffering. It's andere, even others that are not suffering, that they should also participate in the tzar by refraining of tashma shamita. That's the halacha that is learned out from Yosef. But that can't be learned out over here from ha'olam shari b'tzar. Or b'meila came from them nit uplearning, so therefore we can't learn out from Noach while he was in the teva. As by Shnei Ravin is done Isser of di was leiden nit kein Rav. You can't learn out from there that the Isser applies to those that are not suffering. Wie benitten done by Yosef, and as it was in the case of Yosef, was hat nit ausgefällt kein Tvur. He was in Mitzrayim and he wasn't lacking any Tvur, but nevertheless the Isser of Tashma Shamita applied because there were others that were suffering in this time. So this is the reason why Rashi says this Isser to say that if there are some or even majority that are suffering, that the Isser now applies to others. That can't be learned out from Noach when ha'olam b'chlal was shari b'tzar, and that could mean Noach included in the teva wasn't that tzar. So that's why the Isser applies, but we can't learn it out to the way it is by Yosef when he's not in the tzar. So now the question is, so what is the reason of the Isser? So if the reason is not ha'olam shari b'tzar, because that, when we say the reason of ha'olam shari b'tzar, that only applies when you yourself are included in that tzar, as it was by Noach. So what is the reason here by Yosef? Over here by Yosef, when we say that he did not experience the hunger, and nevertheless it was an Isser, here Rashi does not bring this inyan of ha'olam shari b'tzar, and we can't learn it out from Noach. So what is the reason here? So v'abior b'hagdim di'ik loshen Rashi. So the explanation for this is understood by paying close attention to the words of Rashi. Oster la'adam l'shamish mitasei, that the Isser of Tashma Shamita is b'shnei ra'avin. The term shnei ra'avin means it's years of hunger. L'chayre, why is Rashi using this term? And mistake, as das is the Lashon Gemara. Yes, Rashi is quoting the terminology said in the Gemara. But Rashi is doch the Eisen zu abteichen dem Pasuk. Rashi is here to translate and explain the Pasuk. As the Filin Mitzayin, as the Piddush is from Gemara, he doesn't let you know that he's bringing a Piddush from Gemara. Hat nit gedacht mishane sein, so Rashi, there's no reason he should change from the language of the Pasuk itself. Nor sagen Rashi should say, Asu chulu b'shnas harav, that this is a Isser in the year of hunger. That's the language of the pasuk. The lashon pasuk v'alacher is mefarish b'terem tavai shnas harav, the year of hunger. So why is Rashi using a different expression, shnei ra'avain? There's a big difference between the term shnas harav and shnei ra'avain. Shnas harav meant as dem yar is da harav, that now 1 year, this time there's a hunger now. Mashenkein shnei ra'avain. By contrast, the term shnei ra'avain lashon rabim, a plural term. That means it's years of hunger. It's a situation that's lasting for a while now. Now the Rebbe clarifies further. It's not only a difference in how long the hunger lasts, whether it's 1 year or even more than 1 year. It's also a difference in the entire nature of what's going on with this hunger. If something just takes place one time or 1 year, kann sein, as das ist not a vorbeigehende Passierung. So this could be a passing incident, something that happened with one season and it's not going to repeat again. When something happens again, and it's a second year and it's the same hunger, and therefore it's years of hunger, is this a tkufa von Rav? So then it's a time period of hunger. It's not something that happens by chance. Not a chazake. When it happens already 2 seasons or 2 years, so now you have an established time period where it's a time of hunger. Al derech v'Rashi, as Rashi himself explained earlier, that when it came to Yehuda's sons that married Tamar and 2 of the husbands passed away, as Yudat Meregahat Pen Yom is Gam Hu Sheila Ka'achiv, so that if she'll marry a 3rd son, Sheila, that he may pass away like the other 2 brothers, because we see there's now a chazakah established by 2. If 2 passed away, that's a chazakah that establishes that it may happen a 3rd time. So 2 years of hunger establishes a time period of hunger. It's not just a passing incident that happened with 1 season. If it's 1 year hunger, ein yar is a chiddush. When something happens the first time, so it's something novel. Es hat nicht gewachsen, kein Tvua. This year, the Tvua didn't grow. So then this is something that's new, and you don't have to expect that it would happen again. This is adava arei umuchudish l'shaitai. It's something temporary, and it's novel. It's happened, and it's going to pass. Durch zufällige Gesibis, it can be all kinds of different things that came together that caused this. Von dem Jahr that happened in this season, this year, was haben Göring geworden, as die Tvua is on it wachsen, that caused that it shouldn't grow. Aber b'shas das ist Schnee Ravin. Rashi it says though that it's years of hunger. Is das a beweis if a hemshech a ganze tkufe han hagim yuchedes. So this shows already on the continued period of time that there's something unique happening in the world, that Eibishter bringt a tkufe from Rav Bailam. The Eibishter is bringing a time period of hunger in the world. And das is the time b'pshute shal mikra. So with this lashon of shnei ra'avain, we can see what the reason is in the pshat of this story here from dem iser l'shamish b'tasa b'shnei ra'avain. This explains why there's an isser of tashmish hamita for everybody, even for those that are not suffering in this time of hunger and it doesn't have the pain. Because if it's a time period, not just a hunger that comes and goes, but it's a time period where the Eibishter is bringing hunger in the world, when the Ranhagel Milmaila is nit and an from Kol Yemei Aretz Zera V'Kotzer Geimer Lo Yishbaisu, that the Eibishter is not allowing nature to go and continue as it is, that the Eibishter said that the nature continues and goes without a stop. The Eibishter brings the hunger in the world that is the opposite of continuing the world to function and settle the way it should. Hat nit kein Ort zu sich eisig sein im Pruruvu Milles Aretz Yishuv Shalaylam. So if the Eibishter decreed that this is a time period where it's the opposite of Yishuv Olam, that things should not grow and things are to remain in a time of hunger and without any multiplying and so on. So it applies also to Pruruvu, that a person below should behave the same way and not to have Tashmish Hamita and not to bring children into the world. That's the pshat on this issue. So it has nothing to do with the concept of ha'olam shari b'tzar, that a person should feel and have a sympathy for the tzar that others have, and therefore you should also not have tashmish hamita. But it's an inyan of a person seeing what it is that the Eibishter is doing in this time period for the world, and therefore the person behaves accordingly what the ratzon and the decree of the Eibishter in this time period is. So now, based on this, we could understand why Rashi says that this applies specifically over here. We understand why we learned this out from Yosef, and why this doesn't apply to Levi or Yitzchak. But as there is mitzadem, was this is a matzif and shnei ravain. If it's a time period when there's years of hunger, a chazake, when it becomes already an established time period, was beweist auf ein hagem yuchedes. It shows that there's something unique that the Eibishter wants the world not to be in a time of hunger. Is verstandig. So from this we understand as kozman says nitok in chazake. As long as there is no chazake that this is a unique time period, is nitok the iser. The iser of tashmish hamita does not apply. On the contrary, there's a command, there's a mitzvah of pruruvu, to have children. Is kolzmanes is nit bodor, as this is a matzah from shnei ravain, as long as it's not clear and it wasn't established that it's a time period of hunger that the Eibishter wants the world to not grow and not multiply, is al derech hapshat muvan as man torzach nit. You could simply understand that one may not refrain from tashmish hamita, from fulfilling the mitzvah of piriv yeribya. Oster mevatl zara mitzvah saseh. You may not nullify the fulfillment of a mitzvah. Tzilib asafik as efshe zenet al shnei ravin. Just because of a subject that this may be a time period that the Eibishter wants one to be in a situation of hunger and refrain from this mitzvah. It has to be an established chazakeh in order to uproot this mitzvah of periviribya. And based on this, so now the question that we asked, that Tosfos asked and the Mefarshim asked regarding Yitzchak and Levi doesn't begin at all. By Yitzchak in is given kediyuk loshen Rashi. By Yitzchak, Rashi clearly says there, this is given not a shnas ravin. It was just 1 year of hunger, nit shnei ravin. It wasn't years of hunger, so it was a passing thing. So the issa does not apply. Weil derech said by Levi is das given beim onoid gimel chadashim von zweiten Jahr von Rav. When is the time when the pregnancy began? In the beginning of the second year, in the first sometime in the first 3 months of the second year. Warum? Yocheved is geboren geworden beim Seif von zweiten Jahr von Rav. Yocheved is born towards the end of the second year of the hunger. That means that the Tashmish HaMittah was in the beginning of the second year. Noch Eide, es ist gewähnt die Chazake von Shnei Raven. Before there was the Chazake established of years of hunger. So therefore at that time period, he's not allowed to be mevatel the mitzvah of Peri V'Rivya. Mashenk and Yosef hat doch gewusst. On the other hand, Yosef though, even though it was the same time period, before it was already 2 years, but nevertheless, Yosef knew ubar, and to him it was clear, as the Rav is an hagim miyachedes, that this hunger that began is something unique that the Eibush is bringing on the world for an extended time period. As is coming on Sheva Shnei Rav, that there will be 7 years of hunger, with the Tzeilt Frier Ubarucha in the Parsha, and as it says earlier, and it says it at length in the Parsha, as Yosef had Paisa given, that Yosef is the one that explained the dream of Parai, that the Eibishter is showing the 7 years of hunger that he's going to bring on the world. The Far is by him given the Isser, Balt from Tagan. So by Yosef that knew right from the beginning that this is what the dream said, that there'll be 7 years of hunger, so for him the Isser applied right from the beginning because he knew it right from the beginning that it's a unique time period. On Mikan, let men up. So from here we learn, as in jeden Fall, was me weiß bevados, as does eine Shnei Raven, when you know with certainty that these are years of hunger, as the Shen Gimvar a Chazake, that it's a time period when it's already established after 2 years, is Oster la'adam l'shamish mitasai. This Isra of Tashmish HaMittah applies, and therefore, the point here is we now understand how this is different by Yosef than it is by Noach, and this applies only to Yosef in this time period before there were 2 years, and not by Levi and Yitzchak when there was no Chazake yet, when it wasn't established. And therefore by then they have a mitzvah of Pruruvu. However, seemingly you could ask on all this. Definitely, at this time when the hunger began, the interpretation of that Yosef interpreted Parai's dream became well known all over the world. As this well sein Shevish Neirav, that there'll be 7 years of hunger. Und befragt, als man doch euch gesehen, wie das wird nicht kein Bepoil, especially the people saw how the year of hunger began already. Heint wie hat Levi nicht heutisch gewähnt fahren Isser? If so, how was Levi not careful with this, that this may be the beginning of this time period of hunger, and therefore you should be concerned, and the Isser may apply, so you should have refrained even in the beginning, before it was established as 2 years. But the answer to this is very simple. Levi hat dann nicht gewusst, as the Paisa Acholim is Yosef. At that time, Levi did not know who is the one that interpreted Parai's dream this way. He didn't know that this was Yosef. On the contrary, Mod gewusst, as this is Anar, an Eved, that the Pasuk describes him there in Parshas, in the beginning of our Parsha, Mikeitz, that Yosef was a young lad, then he was a slave. Mod gewusst, and they also knew, as the Chatume Parai, that the other advisors of Parai, die ständige Paisrich from Parai, from Melech Mitzrayim, the ones that would usually interpret the dreams of Parai, haben das nicht gesagt v'chulam. They did not interpret the dream this way. So if so, sich nicht verlassen auf Cholem Parai, so Levi is not allowed to rely on a dream of Parai, and if in Pisra from Anar Eved, and the interpretation of this young lad, a slave, mevatel sein, dem Tzivi Hashem from Pruruvu, and to nullify the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Pruruvu. Or befrat, and especially as afilu b'negei acholim fun ayidin, even when there's a dream that a yid has a dream, is do the klal v'Rashi hat schon gebracht b'pirushay ala Torah. So we have the rule, and Rashi brings this in Parshas Vayeshev: ein cholim b'loy dvarim b'telim. You never have a dream that doesn't have something about it that's off, that's not going to be. Kann doch sein. So if so, it could be as afila oy klolas acholim ezemes, that even if over here in this case the dream in general is true, that there'll be a year of hunger, is aber der prat as is going sein sheva shnei rav, the fact that it'll be 7 years of hunger, or even more than 1 year, from the dvarim b'telim shabbat. Maybe that's a detail in the dream that's not true. So still, Levi cannot refrain from the mitzvah of Pruruvu, and therefore he gives birth to his daughter Yocheved during the time of the hunger. With this we understand the precise choice of words when this halacha is brought in Torah and Shulchan Aruch. So they change from the expression that it says in the Gemara, B'shnei Rav, and that this Isser applies when there's years of hunger, using the plural term, when there's a time period of hunger, und sagen B'shnas Ravin. Instead they use the term Shnas Ravin, a year of hunger. in Gemara. So now if you look there in the Gemara itself, gleich far the maime asel adam chulu, before it brings this iser, bringt sich wegen dem schar von amare vasbei b'shnei ravin. It brings about the reward of someone that also starves himself, doesn't eat extra in the years of hunger, even if he has. Was das is wie Rashi teich dort, as Rashi explains, b'schashe mitzayir atzmai. This is a reward for joining the suffering, kishishral b'tzar, if other Yidden are also suffering at that time. And right after the Gemara brings this Isser of Tashmish Shamitah in the year of hunger, that when all the Yidden are suffering and there's one person that separates from everyone, so it talks about how negative that is. So when you see the context of how this is brought in the Gemara, so from this it's clear, as al derech halacha, that learning it as it's brought in the Gemara according to halacha is der tama iser nit vi al derech hapshat kanal. The reason for the iser is not as was explained before al derech hapshat, that it's based on the hanhagim yuchedes, when there's an established time period that the Eibishter does not want any growth in the world, and therefore you have to respond and act in the same way. Nor to leave them was Yisrael shurim b'tzar. Rather, it's the fact that there are Yidden suffering, so you should have sympathy and also, don't go and enjoy yourself while others are suffering. So therefore, you can't say that this is only if there's years, an extended time of hunger. Even if it's just 1 year of hunger, it's a time period where Yidden are suffering, and therefore the Isser applies as well. So that's why, in Torah Shulchan Aruch, when it brings it according to halacha and the context, the way it's brought in the Gemara, so is medayik to say shnas ra'ava, 1 year of hunger. Another point over here we can now understand regarding by Yosef himself, what it says that his children will be born before the years of the hunger. Light and Bi'eranal and Pirish Rashi, according to this explanation in Rashi here, vet euch muss bewähren noch hadik in the minyan. We'll understand another point here regarding the subject. In Pasuk steht, Yosef Yulad Shnei Banim B'terem Tovish Nasarav. It says that Yosef gave birth to his 2 children before the years of hunger. From them was the Pasuk red wegen Leda. From the fact that the Pasuk speaks about the birth of the children is move on, it's understood. As nit nar in the Shnei Rav Gufe is the Issa L'Shamish Cholu. So the Issa in the years of hunger is not just the marital relations. Nor Eich mit Tes Chadashim Frier. Even 9 months before, as the Hailade soll nicht sein in the Shnei Raven. But the Isser is even from 9 months before the beginning of the pregnancy, in order that there should be no birth in the time of the hunger. But the question is, the Isser is just the Tashmish Shamitah in the years of hunger, not the birth of children. So why, regarding Yosef, is the pasuk saying that they were born before the years of hunger came? Let's move on. But based on what we explained there regarding Yosef, it's understood. Vibalt, as the time is, according to Pshat, what's the reason for this Isser? It's not just as a result of the suffering that other Yidden are experiencing. Was damals hat ein Ort zu sein abgehet, not in the Shnei Raven Gufe. So then the Isser of Tashmish Shamitah is only during the time of hunger. When there are people that are suffering, so someone else should have Tashmish Shamitah in a time when others are suffering is inappropriate. So then it would only be regarding Tashmish Shamitah. But the birth of children in the time of hunger, there's no issue with that. No, but rather, according to the Pshat, what was explained, mitzadem zman, that it's a time period, was demolt, hershti and hage, von hepech yeshuv shalayla, that we see from above that the Eibishter wants the world to be in a situation which is opposite of growth and of growing and of settling the world. The Far is nit masim, as in dem Zman soll geboren werden Kinder. So therefore, it's not the right time that even birth of children should happen. Yeshuv Shalaylam b'payil, which is the actual adding to the world being settled with more people coming into the world. So therefore, by Yosef, he made sure that even the birth of his children should not be in this time period. Aber das is not shaykh by Yosef. Obviously, such a thing, to know in advance and to be careful that the children shouldn't be born 9 months after the beginning of the pregnancy in the years of hunger, this is only something that Yosef could be careful with. Was gewusst vor Reis Barer, as is coming on Shnei Ravin. It's because Yosef interpreted the dreams and he knew that this was a Gzeira, and he knew in advance that years of hunger are coming. Mashenkin de limud mikan, but the issa that we learn from here for alamin, for anyone else, the mevatel zayin the mitzvahs fun einosal sigra, to be mevatel the mitzvah of marital relations from periviribia and the mitzvah of having children. But then nit shaykh zu wissen barer does an shnei ravin, so one can't know in advance that years of hunger are coming. Is by say the Isser, no, the Shamish Mitasta B'Shnei Ravin. So for them, the Isser is only during the years of hunger that then one should refrain of Tashmish Hamita or having children as a result of any Tashmish Hamita during the years of hunger, but not in advance. So this is another diak that we see over here in the Lashon of the Pasuk, Ulu Yosef, Yulad Shnei Banim, that the birth of the children was not in the years of hunger. Here the Rebbe concludes this inyan with showing how what Rashi says in Pshat goes along with the way the Zohar describes the Isser. Rashi comes to explain the simple literal pshat of the pasuk is connected with the wine of Torah, which is the secrets of Torah. As it was once explained at length, just as it is with the four worlds that exist, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. Is Olam HaAtzilus shaykh to Olam HaAsiyah dafke. There's a unique connection between the world of Atzilus and the world of Asiyah specifically, as explained in other places. The same is also that the part of Torah which is the secrets of Torah, was Keneged Olam Atzilus, corresponding to the world of Atzilus, verbunden dafke mit dem Chelek HaPshat Olam HaAsiyah, has a unique connection to the Pshat in Torah, which is related to the world of Asiyah. So we see that over here also regarding this subject, this Isser of Tashmish Hamita in the years of hunger. In Zohar von Heintig said that is Mavur, in Zohar in this week's Parsha, it says, as Yimei Harav and Yimei Hara, that the times of a hunger are bad days. Und Ufar is Yosef Sasam Mabue B'Shnas Harav. And therefore Yosef closed up his fountain in the years of hunger. Weil die Kinder was very geboren von dem was Aftach Mabue Ba'hu Zimne, because children that are born from one that opens his fountain in this time period, are called estranged children. Und danach is the Zohar. Then the Zohar says even further, as Yosef that Yosef was careful even more. That he should not give his children to the Sitra Achre, to the side of impurity. What this meant, and what the Zohar means by this, as the Rebbe's father explains in his notes on the Zohar, as he also was careful that even the birth, not only the Tashmish Hamita, but the birth should not be in the years of hunger. Even if the children are being born from what begins, a pregnancy that begins from before the years of hunger. Why? Because even if the birth takes place in the years of hunger, so the birth was in an impure time period. What the Zohar here is saying, that this Isser applies not only for the Tashmish Hamita, but for the birth as well. So this fits with what Rashi says. As the tam is nidval Yisrael shroim b'tzar, that the reason is not only because not to have Tashmish Hamita in times when others are suffering, but it's a unique time period in the world. When it says when it's a time period where the Eibusher decrees that there should be no growth and it's a time of hunger, ukanal ba'arucha, as explained before, so the Zohar is bringing out the exact same point and describing how in the times of hunger it's a time where there's tumah in the world and therefore it's not a time to give birth to children. And here we see yet again the nifloas and Pirish Rashi al Torah, the wonders in how Rashi explains things in Torah. As b'shas melen Pirish Rashi mit der Anoche, as es ist geschrieben geworden, euch fahre ben chomish lemikra. When you learn Rashi with the attitude that everything that Rashi writes is to explain the chumash, the psukim for a child to understand. Or b'meila taichman Rashi's verte kipshutam, and you translate what Rashi says literally without adding any other mefarshim. Just understand and take every single word in Rashi and explain it clearly. This, as a filav in Rashi, is maitik lashon Gemara. And even when Rashi is just simply quoting the same language that it says in the Gemara, is a bezayin kavana dabei wie the pirish hapashat from the verte. But nevertheless, Rashi then, when he quotes it, Rashi means that you should now understand it the way it is literally. Not necessarily the way it is in Gemara, where sometimes certain things are not necessarily literal, and it's al derech halacha. Like a child would translate it, literally. So over here, when you translate the words Shnei Re'ovain literally, so you come away with a completely different understanding of what the Isser means and what it includes. Then you see that it includes even the birth, and together with going along with the point that it says in the Zohar. So automatically, and many times, Farenfert, Shailas, by focusing on the exact words of Rashi, it answers questions of Shakel Vatari and all kinds of discussions from the Farshim that the commentaries are involved in. And you can furthermore take out wondrous points, including also seeing in Rashi the connection to what's explained in the wine of Torah, which is in the secrets of Torah.